It was Porsche's first Le Mans winner and then vanished. Not stolen, not scrapped, just gone. For decades, nobody knew where this little silver underdog had disappeared to. Porsche had moved on to bigger, faster, flashier machines, and the world forgot. Until one day, a battered red roadster rolled out of hiding, sun-faded, dented, and unassuming, and inside its tired frame lay the greatest secret in Porsche history. Before disappearing into obscurity, the story of this little silver champion began in a sawmill in Gmünd, Austria. In 1948, Porsche wasn't the powerhouse that we know today. There were no Cayennes, no 911 Legends, just Ferry Porsche, designer Erwin Komenda, and a handful of craftsmen hammering out what would become the company's very first production sports car. What made the 356-2 even more special was how it was built. These weren't mass-produced machines, they were handcrafted in tiny numbers. Each car carried its own quirks and individuality, the fingerprints of the craftsmen who shaped it. These cars were destined for competition, and for one of them, the stage would be the biggest endurance race in the world, Le Mans. To understand just how crazy this was, you've got to know what Le Mans meant in 1951. The 24 hours of Le Mans wasn't just another race, it was the race. A brutal, day-long trial where cars weren't only judged on speed, but endurance, reliability, and the sheer toughness of the people driving them. For manufacturers, a good showing at Le Mans wasn't just a trophy on the shelf, it was a ticket to credibility on the world stage. So, when Porsche showed up with their little 356-2, the odds didn't exactly look stacked in their favor. Against the big names like Jaguar, Ferrari, Aston Martin, this featherweight aluminum roadster seemed almost laughable. But Porsche had something to prove. They entered car number 46, driven by Frenchmen Auguste Healy and Edmond Mouche, and what followed would put Porsche on the motorsport map forever. For 24 relentless hours, through the night, in the rain, on a circuit where headlights barely cut through the darkness, Healy and Mouche coaxed everything they could from the 1.1-liter flat 4. The little Porsche averaged 73 miles per hour. Again, that doesn't sound wild now, but back then was heroic. And when the dust settled, it had done the unthinkable. Porsche had finished Le Mans, and not just finished, they'd won their class, the 1100cc category. It was Porsche's very first international victory. That single triumph changed everything. Porsche was no longer just Ferry Porsche's side project built out of a sawmill in Austria. Overnight, they had racing credibility. Overnight, they had a future, and yet, despite the glory, the very car that made it all possible would soon vanish without a trace. After its class win in Le Mans, you'd think Porsche would have tucked car number 46 into a museum, polished it daily, and guarded it like treasure. Nope! This wasn't a relic. It was a race car, and race cars back then had brutal lives. That little 356-2 kept competing, turning up at Zandvoort and other circuits until one fateful day on the Autobahn. It was mangled in a nasty road accident. Now, here's where things get strange. Most people assumed that was the end of the story, that the first Le Mans winning Porsche had been destroyed, gone forever. But in reality, the car's identity got scrambled. Its components, scarred but still salvageable, were swapped into another chassis. Over time, its lineage was blurred. What had once been Porsche's first international champion slowly melted into obscurity, lost in the shuffle of chassis numbers and half-forgotten paperwork. So, for decades, the world believed that car number 46, the one that announced Porsche to the racing world, no longer existed. It was treated like a ghost story, a piece of history that had been erased by bad luck and a bit of twisted metal. And yet, history has a way of hiding in plain sight. Now let's fast forward to 2009, in the quiet hills of Oregon. Porsche enthusiast Cameron Healy came across what looked like a battered, roofless 356 Roadster. To most people, it was nothing more than a tired old sports car, sun-faded and scarred from years of neglect, but Healy couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unusual hiding beneath the layers of red paint and rust. The deeper he looked, the stranger it got. Numbers stamped into places no ordinary repair shop would ever bother with. Weld lines that seemed oddly familiar. Each detail felt like a breadcrumb leading back to something bigger. With every discovery, it became harder to dismiss this roadster as just another survivor from Porsche's early years. It was as though the car was carrying a secret, waiting for someone stubborn enough, or lucky enough, to listen. Healy began comparing what he found with old photographs and records from Porsche's earliest days at Le Mans. The more he studied, the more it lined up. Scars in the chassis matched scars in the historical photos. The weld marks weren't just random, they told a story. The story of repairs done after long, punishing races. Piece by piece, the mystery deepened until it was clear this wasn't just a coincidence. That's when Healy called in reinforcements. Enter Rod Emory, the California-based craftsman who had practically rewritten the book on restoring and reimagining Porsche 356s. Emory wasn't just an expert, he was part detective, part surgeon, and part artist. Together, Healy and Emory pored over every inch of the car, and slowly, the puzzle snapped into focus. The battered roadster wasn't some random barn find, it was the missing Le Mans winning chassis, Porsche's first champion, hiding in plain sight for nearly 60 years. The ghost of number 46 had come back to life, and now it was ready for its resurrection. Identifying the ghost was one thing, but bringing it back to life was another. That's where Emory Motorsports stepped in, methodical, patient, and just obsessive enough to reverse engineer a legend without sanding off its soil. First came the careful teardown. Nothing dramatic, no wrench-flinging montage, just quiet forensic work. Every fastener was bagged and tagged, every bracket photographed in situ, every original stamp protected under tape like a museum artifact. They mapped panel gaps, traced weld seams, and noted the oddities that only hand-built Gmünd cars have. The tiny asymmetries, the tool marks, the human fingerprints and metal. The goal wasn't to strip a car, it was to preserve the evidence. Then the homework phase went into overdrive. Factory drawings, period service notes, and hours of Le Mans photography came off shelves and out of archives. The team layered old images over new measurements to confirm contours, hole placements, and even the angle of the rear window frame. When a photo from 1951 showed a ripple along the seam, they didn't correct it into perfection, they documented it. Authenticity meant honoring what actually raced, not inventing what never existed. With the blueprint rebuilt on paper, the body could be rebuilt in metal. Wooden bucks were carved to capture the exact Gmünd geometry, those soft shoulders, that tapering roofline, the subtle crown in the doors. Over those bucks, fresh aluminum was hand-formed, anneal, wheel, and test fit. Planish, test fit again. Doors were hung, gaps set, hinges aligned until they closed with that right, quiet click. This is the slow art you never see in highlight reels. The hours that turn sheet metal into silhouette. Details matter most where they're easiest to get wrong. Rivet style and spacing were matched to period practice. Finishes were chosen for the way they aged in 1951, not how they shine in 2025. Hardware head profiles, slotted screws where slotted screws belong, because the people who notice are exactly the people this car exists for. Even the glass had to be right. Thickness, curvature, and optical character that would sit properly in the frames and look correct under a paddock sun. Under the skin, the mechanicals were treated with the same restraint. Original components were restored whenever possible. Replacements matched material and process, not just part numbers. The intent was never to create a better-than-new hot lapper. It was to give the car back its 1951 voice. The engine note, the shift feel, the lightness in the steering just off-center, all tuned to speak the dialect of Le Mans at dawn. Piece by piece, the past reassembled itself. Not as a glossy tribute, but as a working archive that could roll, breathe, and be judged by stopwatch and headlight beam. When the last roundel settled and the final fastener found home, the silver coupe didn't look restored, it looked inevitable, like it had simply taken a long, complicated detour back to where it always belonged. which sets up the only question that matters after a resurrection like this. Once you've rebuilt Porsche's first champion, how do you bring it back to the world it created? After decades in hiding and years in Emory's workshop, number 46 finally returned to where it made history. In 2023, the silver 356-2-063 took part in Le Mans centenary celebrations, coinciding with Porsche's 75th anniversary. For the first time in 72 years, it rolled across the same asphalt that had tested it back in 1951. Modern parade laps merged with archival footage, showing the little aluminum roadster side by side with black and white images of Valet and Mouche battling through rain, darkness, and fatigue. The contrasts were striking. The track slick with modern rubber, yet the essence of racing still there. The same curves, same sweeping straights, same spirit. Watching Cameron Healy and Rod Emory take the wheel, you could feel the weight of history beneath them. This wasn't just a parade or a photo op, it was a resurrection, a tangible connection between past and present, and a moment of quiet triumph. The car that had vanished, been mistaken for lost, and painstakingly rebuilt was now finally where it belonged, back on the stage where it first proved Porsche could compete with the best in the world. It was more than nostalgia. It was proof that passion, patience, and craftsmanship can bring history back to life. The first Porsche champion had come home, and in doing so, reminded everyone why the little silver car mattered, not just for its victories, but for the story it carried, the story that had been waiting 72 years to be told. If you loved this journey through time and metal, hit like and subscribe. There are plenty more legendary cars with stories waiting to be uncovered, and you don't want to miss a single one.